Imagine an event so catastrophic it erased entire civilizations from the map. What if I told you one single disaster killed more people than every war of the 20th century combined? These are the 10 worst tragedies in all of human history. And number 1 will leave you speechless. Number 10. The Great Chinese Famine. Between 1959 and 1961, Mao Zedong's disastrous agricultural reforms triggered the deadliest famine in recorded history. Entire villages were silenced. Families buried their own children. And the government kept it secret from the world for decades. Estimates suggest between 15 and 55 million people starved to death. Farmers were forced to hand over all their grain while their families died at home. It remains one of the most covered-up atrocities of the modern era. The silence around it is almost as chilling as the famine itself. 55 million lives. That is more than the entire population of South Korea today, wiped out in just 3 years. Number 9. The Mongol conquests. Between 1206 and 1368, Genghis Khan and his descendants built the largest land empire ever known, and they built it on bones. Entire cities were not just defeated, they were erased, their populations slaughtered down to the last survivor. Historians estimate up to 40 million people perished, roughly 10% of the entire world population at the time. Some regions of Persia and China did not recover for centuries. The Mongols did not just conquer lands, they reset civilizations to zero. Some Persian cities like Nishapur went from thriving metropolises to ghost towns literally overnight. Archaeology confirms it. The silence in the ruins still speaks. Number 8. World War I. Called the war to end all wars, it was anything but. From 1914 to 1918, an entire generation of young men was fed into the machinery of industrial killing. Trenches, poison gas, machine guns. Warfare had never been this merciless, and the world had no idea it was only a preview. Over 20 million soldiers and civilians died. Millions more were permanently maimed. Entire nations lost a full generation of men. And the Treaty of Versailles that ended it planted the seeds for something even worse, a war that would make this one look like a rehearsal. Crazy, right? But it gets worse. Much, much worse. Keep watching. Number 7. The Spanish Flu. In 1918, as World War I was ending, an invisible killer was just getting started. The Spanish flu spread across every continent in a matter of months. It killed more people in a single year than the Black Death killed in a century. Young, healthy adults were its favorite victims. Between 50 and 100 million people died in just 2 years. The flu attacked the immune system so aggressively it turned the body against itself. Soldiers called it 3-day fever, because by day 3, many were already gone. The world was too exhausted from war to even notice. The Spanish flu infected 1/3 of the entire world population. 1 in 3 people on Earth. Think about that for a moment. Number 6. The Atlantic slave trade. For over 400 years, roughly 12 million African men, women and children were forcibly shipped across the ocean under conditions so horrific that millions never survived the journey. This was not a tragedy of nature. Every single death was a deliberate choice made by other human beings. Up to 2 million enslaved people died during the Middle Passage alone, thrown overboard, killed by disease, or simply left to die in the dark below deck. The trauma rippled across generations. Its consequences shaped entire continents and are still felt profoundly today. And yet this horror was entirely legal, defended by governments, churches, and merchants. Systemic evil, normalized for centuries. Number 5. World War II. The deadliest conflict in human history. From 1939 to 1945, nations across the globe threw everything they had at each other. Entire cities were firebombed into ash. Death camps operated like factories. And by the end, an estimated 70 to 85 million people were gone. The Holocaust alone murdered 6 million Jewish people and millions of others in a systematic genocide. The atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki vaporized over 100,000 people in seconds. World War II did not just kill people, it rewrote the moral boundaries of what humanity is capable of doing to itself. The Hiroshima bomb exploded with a force of 15,000 tons of TNT. The entire city center was gone in under a minute. Number 4. The Taiping Rebellion. Most people have never even heard of it, and that alone should terrify you. Between 1850 and 1864, a self-proclaimed brother of Jesus led a civil war in China so devastating it killed more people than World War I. This was the bloodiest civil war in human history. Between 20 and 30 million people died. Cities were razed. Farmland collapsed. Starvation followed the sword. The Qing dynasty barely survived. And in the West, almost nobody reported it. A catastrophe on a biblical scale, buried under the noise of Victorian-era politics. The leader Hong Xiuquan claimed to have visions from God. His followers believed him completely. tens of millions paid with their lives. Number 3. The Black Death. In 1347, a ship docked in Sicily carrying sailors covered in black boils oozing blood and pus. Within days, the city was in panic. Within months, all of Europe was dying. The Black Death was not just a plague. It was the closest thing to a real apocalypse the Western world has ever experienced. In just 5 years, the Black Death killed between 75 and 200 million people worldwide. Europe lost up to half of its entire population. There were not enough living people to bury the dead. Entire villages vanished from maps. The stench of death hung over the continent for a generation. The Black Death reshuffled all of medieval society. Surviving peasants suddenly had power because labor was scarce. The church lost its authority because its prayers changed nothing. In its horror, the plague accidentally planted the seeds of the Renaissance and modern democracy. Catastrophe rewriting civilization. The bacteria responsible, Yersinia pestis, still exists today. Scientists have found it in modern rodent populations across the globe. Number 2. The Columbian Exchange and the genocide of indigenous peoples. When Columbus landed in 1492, he triggered the greatest demographic collapse in human history. Diseases like smallpox, measles, and typhus swept through the Americas, killing populations that had zero immunity. Entire civilizations vanished in a generation. Estimates suggest 50 to 90% of all indigenous peoples in the Americas died within 150 years of contact. That is up to 100 million people. Aztec, Inca, Maya, entire empires reduced to shadows of themselves. Colonizers did not just take land. They erased the people who lived on it. So many people died that farmland across the Americas was abandoned. Forests regrew so rapidly that CO2 levels across the entire planet dropped. Scientists have found the evidence in ice cores. The genocide was so enormous it literally changed Earth's atmosphere. Let that sink in. Scientists call it the Great Dying. A genocide so vast it left a mark on the planet's climate, visible in ice samples pulled from Greenland today. Number 1. The entire history of smallpox. Not one outbreak. All of it. Smallpox is the only disease in human history estimated to have killed over 1 billion people across 3,000 years. It toppled the Roman Empire. It wiped out Native Americans. It scarred kings and killed pharaohs. It was the deadliest force in human history. In the 20th century alone, smallpox killed 300 million people, more than all of that century's wars combined. It had a 30% kill rate. Survivors were left blind or permanently disfigured. Mothers watched their children turn inside out from disease. No army in history caused this much death. And here is the most remarkable fact in this entire video: we won. In 1980, the World Health Organization declared smallpox officially eradicated. The only disease humanity has ever completely wiped from the earth. The deadliest killer in history, defeated by a needle. That is both the darkest and the most hopeful story ever told. The last known natural case of smallpox was Ali Mau Malin in Somalia, 1977. He survived. 1 year later, it was over forever. Crazy how hope and horror can share the same story. From 1 billion dead to complete eradication in a single century. Which of these tragedies shocked you the most? Drop it in the comments. History hides more horror than most people ever learn, and knowing it matters. If this video made you think, smash that subscribe button. We publish deep dives into history's most shocking and forgotten stories every week. You do not want to miss what is coming next. Let's take one more look at everything we just covered.